So, welcome everybody to this webinar, Front of Pack Nutrition Labeling Nordic Perspective. My name is Elisabet Rytter and I will be the moderator through this webinar. I work at the Swedish Food Federation, who is the organizer of this event, and this webinar will be recorded, and we will provide a web link to all participants in due course after the webinar. Good to know for everybody. Right now, there are several policy and regulatory initiatives announced in EU's food strategy Farm to Fork, including labeling. And therefore, there is a need for increased knowledge about front-of-pack nutrition labeling. So our intention is that this webinar will help to meet this need. And therefore, we have invited 5 experts in the field of front-of-pack nutrition labeling that will present different perspectives. We're starting from an overview of Farm to Fork and FOP, as I call it now. And we will then listen to presentations of 3 labeling schemes. It's Nutri Score, its heart logo, and its keyhole. And finally, an insight into the actual impact of FOP. I will introduce our speakers one by one when it's time for the presentation. But before that, some practical issues. We will open the chat at 10:30, where you all can write questions to the speakers. As we have limited time, we will probably not be able to answer them all. The aim of the webinar is to present expert knowledge about FOP. So we will not discuss different actors' position. So please have that in mind when writing questions in the chat. So let me introduce the first speaker. It's Nicklas Amelin, my colleague at the Swedish Food Federation and our EU expert. He works a lot with the European food strategy Farm to Fork, and he will give us an overview of this strategy and especially about food FOP nutrition labeling's part in it. The stage is yours, Nicklas.
Thank you very much, Elisabet, and good morning, everybody. So I will give a very brief introduction on the Farm to Fork strategy overall and where in this strategy the front of pack nutrition labeling issue takes place. So next slide, please. So as you probably all very well aware by now, the Farm to Fork strategy is part of the current European Commission's sustainability agenda. When the current Commission took office back in 2019, President Ursula von der Leyen was given a very strong mandate to act on sustainability issues over a large number of policy areas of the EU. Including food. So by end of May last year in 2020, the European Commission then presented this strategy under the name From Farm to Fork, where the overall aim, as I'm sure you're all aware, is to speed up the transition towards sustainable food systems. And sustainability in this respect should be understood in all the 3 dimensions of sustainability that are shown on this slide. So the environmental and climate related dimension, which is perhaps what most people immediately associate with sustainability, but also the other 2 aspects. So the social dimension, which also includes public health when we're speaking about food policy, and then also the economic sustainability dimension. And this strategy goes, it comes at a time when a sustainable food system is really at everybody's minds and lips. We have, for example, later this month, a UN summit on sustainable food systems. So this is also part of a global trend. Now, the strategy as such, just for clarity, is not a legislative proposal. It's a political strategy. It gives the thrust that the European Commission has indicated that it wants to give to food policy over the next years until the end of its mandate, which runs out in 2024. But under the strategy, there are a number of both legislative and also non-legal proposals that will be rolled out successively, and some have already started to materialize. And I will come back a little bit to the list of initiatives, but one of them is obviously the front of pack nutrition labeling legal proposal. But before going into those actions, we can look at the next slide, where I've listed a little bit the reactions that we have seen from the legislators, because as you know, the European Commission is proposing a new law, but it's up to the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers to adopt it. Now, the Council, for its part, adopted some overall conclusions on the Farm to Fork strategy in October last year. And then that was followed up by a number of specific Council conclusions on certain areas within the Farm to Fork strategy, where one of them was front of pack nutrition labeling. In the end, the controversy around this very topic that we're discussing today proved to be so substantial that in the end, no full Council conclusions were possible to be adopted, but they were rather adopted as presidency conclusions with the support of 23 member states. And I will come back in my last slide a little bit on what they said on that. But just to say that the European Parliament is much later than the Council in responding to the Farm to Fork strategy overall. And their report on the Farm to Fork strategy will only be adopted later this year in the autumn. And obviously, a number of stakeholders, member states, and so on have also taken position on the Farm to Fork. It sparked a lot of attention. So next slide, please. So I will not go through this in any detail, but just to highlight a few of the initiatives that the Commission has outlined in the strategy, such as a new code of conduct and a framework for voluntary commitments by the food industry that has been launched this year in July. There is an initiative coming up on food reformulation. There is also talk about setting maximum limits for certain nutrients. And then we have a big package of labeling issues where the front of pack nutrition labeling is sitting together with issues such as origin labeling, date marking, and the labeling of alcoholic beverages. And linked to all this is also the nutrient profiles, which initially was foreseen to be used for regulating nutrition and health claims, but where the Commission also sees a link to the front of pack nutrition labeling initiative. And a number of other initiatives will be taken, but I also want to highlight the last line on this slide. By 2024, the Commission has indicated that they will present an initiative on an integrated or a combined sustainability labeling. What exactly that entails is yet to be seen, but the idea should be, we presume, that there would be a labeling system that encompasses all of the sustainability aspects, so including health and nutrition, so what goes into the front of pack nutrition labeling scheme, but also other aspects such as social rights, animal welfare, and environmental impact. So that will be very interesting to see how that will pan out. But then back to our front of pack nutrition labeling, which is our subject for today. Next slide, please. So this is announced, as I said, as an initiative coming up by the end of next year. But the issue, of course, is not new. The discussion around front of pack nutrition labeling is a continuation of a debate that has been going on for a number of years. In the labeling regulation, the so-called FIC regulation, food information to consumers, there is a front of pack nutrition labeling system there that you see the what used to be called the GDA, which is now called the reference intake, that you see to the left. But then that's the only, at current state of affairs, this is the only EU labeling scheme. But there are a number and a growing number of member states who have national front of pack nutrition labeling schemes, and we will hear from 3 of them in a minute. And just to give the background on why is this now an issue for the EU, well, it's clear that the proliferation of national schemes will have, and does already have, I think, an impact on the EU internal market. So already there is an interest for the EU to act. But then obviously there is now also an interest at EU level on the front of pack nutrition labeling as such, and the impact it could have on helping consumers to improve their diets. Now the groundwork has been done by the European Commission in the shape of a number of reports and studies that we have seen. And then, as I said, they prepare a legislative proposal by the end of next year. What is clear is that the European Commission, what they want is a harmonized and a mandatory front of pack nutrition labeling scheme for the EU. But it remains still to be seen what system will that be. They have made it clear that this will be the result of an impact assessment that is now only being started. So that is still, the jury is still out on that one. And then what about the existing national schemes? Because as we see on the map, we have different schemes already in place. So how will they be affected, and will they even be legally allowed to continue with an EU system? And then on my last slide, I will just give you a glimpse of what the Council in these presidency conclusions that were adopted in December, which was then not supported by a group of member states. So 4, since there are 27 in total in the Council. But it already gives obviously a certain hint of what member states actually think, and I think that discussion that led up to this situation of having 23 supporters and 4 who could not support it also gives the Commission useful information about where are the hurdles and how to frame a legal proposal when we come to that. But in the Council discussion, it was clear that there was a general support for a harmonized front of pack nutrition labeling, but then there was also a clear signal that a voluntary scheme must also be considered by the Commission, and not only a mandatory scheme as foreseen by the Commission. So the front of pack nutrition labeling is recognized as an important tool for promoting sustainable diets. And there was also a highlighting of the connection to national dietary guidelines that should be preserved, and that there should be a strong research and evidence based, and also a dialogue and consultation with stakeholders. There's been a lot of discussion about exempting traditional products, which are not possible to reformulate. And at any rate, it's very clear that the information to consumers should be transparent and easily understood. That's a prerequisite for member states in this, and I think for the Commission as well. And on the last point is what was also very highlighted by a lot of member states is that impacts of any EU scheme for front of pack nutrition labeling should be evaluated as regards impact on dietary behavior by consumers. So that was in brief the background for and the farm to fork strategy and the place of FOP within it. So thank you.
So thank you, Nicklas, for your presentation. Now we will go to the next speaker in the program, and we will listen to Professor Chantal Julia at Université Sorbonne in Paris Nord. She had made a lot of research about front of pack nutrition labeling, and especially Nutri Score. She is also a member of the scientific team that developed the Nutri Score system. So Professor Julia will now teach us more about this colorful labeling, among others, in construction and purpose. So the stage is yours, Professor Julia.
Thank you very much. I am honored to be a participant in this webinar. So as was presented, I have been involved in the development of the Nutri Score since its beginning, so I know a lot about it. I know also that there has been a lot of research on it, and given that there is an overview of the research overall on front pack labeling, I have made a presentation rather on the implementation aspects and experience from France with some elements of research, but not too much. So I hope that some elements will be discussed later on, and there are always questions that can be asked afterwards. So the next slide, please. So the Nutri Score was initially developed by an independent research team, of which I'm part of, based on the literature at the time that set some criteria for success of a front of pack labeling system, and 3 were considered in the development of the Nutri Score. First was that summary labels that provide a single indicator of the overall nutritional quality of a food are more efficient than those that present information based on each nutrient, and in particular for vulnerable groups that do not necessarily have the knowledge to interpret the information that is provided if it's provided in the form of each nutrient separately. Second element was that a label that potentially is affixed on all foods is more effective than a system that is affixed only on a fraction of foods, be they healthier or less healthy foods. And in particular, in a system where it can only be voluntary, because in the absence of a label, in the case of a voluntary system, you don't know if it's because the food, for example, is less healthy, or if the manufacturer did not apply for it, for example. So there is a confusion that can be held by the consumer on the what should be interpreted as an absence of a label. So graded labels that can be affixed on all foods and provide a graded indication of the overall nutritional quality of the food were considered as being more effective. And the third, and perhaps one of the most important system, was the idea that color-coded systems, and not any colors, but those that are readily interpreted by consumers as the red and green scale, would be more efficient because they immediately gather attention from the consumer and are immediately interpreted. So this led to the development of a graded colored summary label. So the first mention of the Nutri Score was the one on the top right hand of the screen, which was developed by a research team, and you can see that our research team is not necessarily very good at graphic design. So it was later adapted by the French Santé Publique France, who developed the final visual graphical design of the label that you can see on the bottom of the screen that is known now. So next slide, please. So as the front of pack labeling provides an overall indication of the nutritional quality of the food, it needs to rely on a nutrient profile. And the nutrient profile that was selected was the one that at the time had the best available literature support, which was the Food Standard Agency Ofcom model that is currently being used in the UK for the regulation of advertising to children. So the nutrient profile provides an overall indication of the nutritional quality of the food and allocates points for unfavorable elements such as energy, sugar, saturated fat, and sodium, up from 0 to 10 points, and then balances it with favorable elements that are the percentage of fruit, vegetable, legume, nuts, and oils, fibers, and proteins, and based on both favorable and unfavorable element, provides an overall final evaluation of the nutrient profile of the food, which is then translated into the Nutri Score. As initially the nutrient profile was developed for regulation purposes and not necessarily for front of pack labeling, and in the UK market and not necessarily in the French market, there were adaptations that were made by the French High Council for Public Health for 3 groups of foods, cheese, beverages, and fats and oils, in order to ensure that it was aligned with dietary guidelines and that the Nutri Score provided enough differentiation within a food group as to the variation of nutritional composition within that group. Next slide, please. So if you see here the application to foods, overall the nutrient profile is aligned with nutritional recommendation. You see that foods that are generally recommended within dietary guidelines, such as legumes, whole grains, fruit and vegetables, and for example fish, are generally classified as A, whereas those that are should be more limited in dietary guidelines, just like sugary beverages or processed meats, are rather classified in the lower ranks, meaning D or E. But even within a food group, there is some form of differentiation. For example, for bread, whole grain bread is going to be classified as A, but refined bread rather classified as B. And this applies overall to all food groups, generally speaking. There may be some foods for which composition does not necessarily fit the overall algorithm, but this is generally considered marginal for now. Next slide, please. In the development of the Nutri Score, one of the key elements was to validate the nutrient profile, and in particular in its validation towards prospective association with health outcomes. So multiple studies were performed and showed that the consumption of foods with higher scores on the Food Standard Agency nutrient profiling system, so foods that are less favorably ranked in the Nutri Score, are associated with an increasing risk of developing cardiovascular disease, cancer, or type 2 diabetes. And these results were quite consistent in various studies, first in French cohorts, the Nutrinet Santé study and the Suvimax cohort, in the APIC cohort study, or in the SUN and the Enrica Spanish cohort studies. So this led the EARC to announce just yesterday that based on the scientific evidence, and in particular the studies that were made on APIC, that the Nutri Score should be the ER is supporting the Nutri Score as a front-of-pack labeling scheme for the EU. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the political development of the Nutri Score. As I told you, the first mention of the Nutri Score as a front-of-pack labeling appeared in 2014, but the signature of the decree for the Nutri Score only happened in 2017. In the meantime, multiple studies were performed by scientific independent research teams just like my own and others. There were reports from independent governmental agencies, and there was a large consultation process with various stakeholders that led to a large-scale trial in supermarkets investigating the impact on the nutritional quality of purchases of various types of labels that were proposed by various stakeholders. And finally, based on the results of this trial, the Nutri Score appeared as the best solution and was then implemented into law. So in France in 2017, it was then registered as a brand by Santé Publique France. And later on, it developed outside of national boundaries. Next slide, please. So in terms of implementation, initially, at first, there was a complete opposition by all industry stakeholders on the Nutri Score, based on the fact that red was considered discriminatory, that it would lead to economic downfalls of multiple businesses. So there were no businesses that were actually supporting the Nutri Score. At the time of the signature of the decree, 6 early adopters adopted the Nutri Score, and then later on there was a wider support in 2018 with 85 brands that supported the Nutri Score, and now today in 2021 we are more than 500 companies that have signed up for the Nutri Score, and the market share of these companies represent more than 50% of market share in sales volumes in 2020. So this is a massive support for the Nutri Score, but initially it just needs to be remembered that the Nutri Score was not necessarily the best option available for industry in the beginning. Next slide, please. In terms of population support, the notoriety of the Nutri Score has been investigated by Santé Publique France, and there's been an increasing level of awareness to the Nutri Score in the population from 42% to more than 80% of participants in that study reported that they had heard or seen the Nutri Score, which is quite in line with the fact that it appeared more and more on the front of pack of the various foods in supermarkets. And this is the same for the self-report of purchases of products displaying the Nutri Score. There was a sharp increase in 2019 compared to previous years, and in particular linked to the fact that the Nutri Score actually appeared on food packages. So this awareness led more and more participants to declare that they had purchased foods with the Nutri Score, and they were taking this into account into their purchases. Next slide, please. So there is a wide population support to the Nutri Score, a very positive opinion generally of the Nutri Score. 90% of the population is favorable to the Nutri Score, considers it to be easy and quick to understand, easy to identify on pack, and trustworthy. And some of the trustworthiness of the Nutri Score can be linked to the fact that first, it was independently developed with no influence from the industry, and second, that it is a brand from Santé Publique France, which is the French Agency for Health Promotion. So these two comfort the consumer as to the trustworthiness of the system. Next slide, please. So after the French experience, the Nutri Score disseminated in the EU, with now 7 countries having adopted or being in the process of adopting the Nutri Score. And these include Belgium, Switzerland, Germany, the Netherlands, and Spain, and Luxembourg. And some countries that are currently investigating the interest of the Nutri Score. Austria is one of them, but the UK, for example, is currently revising its front-of-pack labeling strategy, and some questions have arisen as to the possibility of the Nutri Score, though it's just a possibility at this stage. Next slide, please. So this this involvement of multiple countries has led to the development of a transnational governance, because now the Nutri Score is a brand that is owned by Santé Publique France, so a French health promotion agency. The terms of use say that the Nutri Score is free of charge for the manufacturer, but there are some caveats as to its adoption. If a producer wishes to adopt the Nutri Score, it needs to adopt it on all food products on its portfolio. It has 2 years to adopt it fully, but by the end of the 2 years, all products in the portfolio need to have the Nutri Score, whether they are rather favorably or unfavorably rated in the system. So the second element is the transnational governance of the Nutri Score that I was telling you about. First, there's been a steering committee from health authorities from the various countries that have adopted the Nutri Score that has set up, including participants from France, Belgium, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. So this steering committee has the objective of simplifying the procedures depending on the country to ensure that it's a smooth process in whichever country the manufacturer is currently adopting the Nutri Score. And second, there's a scientific committee of experts from each country that has been set up last year and has the task of updating the algorithm, whether in investigating the new elements of literature of the association between nutrient intakes and or various types of food groups intakes and health. Or stakeholders may provide some feedback as to food groups for which they consider that the Nutri Score is underperforming. So the scientific committee has the task of responding to these stakeholders' requests. And so the scientific committee is currently working on this. And we hope that there may be some updates to the algorithm to better align the Nutri Score with dietary guidelines of all the countries that are currently participating in the system first, and second, to ensure that based on the experience that we now have on the Nutri Score, some elements can be also upgraded. Next slide, please. So I think this is an overall overview of the Nutri Score. If there are any questions, I'm of course available for any questions you might have in the end in the chat. Thank you.
So many thanks, Chantal, for your presentation. Very interesting. Now it's time for Anna-Kara to make a presentation. And Anna-Kara has a Master of Nutrition and works at the Finnish Heart Association. She works with the Finnish heart symbol, one of the well-known Nordic front-of-pack nutrition labeling teams that has been running for many years. How many years we will probably know by listening to you, Anna. So welcome to teach us more.
Hi, and thank you. And first I want to thank for this opportunity to have this presentation here. I'm very glad to be here. And so, yeah, my name is Anna-Kara. And as you just told, I'm nutritionist and food expert in Finnish Heart Association. I'm working here in a small team. We are running the heart symbol system. We are doing marketing, communications, social media. We received heart symbol applications, keep help desk for companies, and so on. Well, but let's talk more about the heart symbol. So next slide, please. Yeah. Well, about the background first. Heart symbol is at the moment 21 years old. It started in Millennium with cooperation with authorities and food industry. And at that time, we have questioned how to improve public health in practice. Among many other solutions, we had this idea of labeling system that helped consumer to pick up healthier choices in groceries. So that was the beginning of the heart symbol. And still, after 20 years, the overall purpose of heart symbol is same, to promote public health in Finland. Heart symbol is easy way to make healthier choices in groceries, but it also it's a tool for food industry to because it gives the criteria to reformulate the system, reformulate their products, and also it's a way to promote the healthier products. And then I want to mention that nowadays we have also the heart symbol meal, which means that in Finland, in public caterings, like in school, kindergartens, and hospitals, we serve healthier lunches called heart symbol lunch. Yes, and next slide, please. And then you had a question about how the heart symbol is connected to recommendations. Well, they are closely connected. Here you can see the Finnish nutrition recommendation in a nutshell in the left side, and which is by the way, derived from the Nordic nutrition recommendations, as you probably know. These recommendations aims is to point out and also tackle the several challenges in the Finnish diet. So we get too much salt, hard fat, sugar, and too little fiber and unsaturated fat from our diet. So what to do for that? And next slide, please. Well, the heart symbol is one tool that helps to meet the recommendation. And how does it do it? Well, it does with criteria which focus on main nutritional challenges in Finland. There are criteria for fat quality, salt, sugar, and fiber. And what makes this possible is that in heart symbol we have over 50 product categories with their own criteria. So we can really focus to the product group specific nutritional factors. And what more about the criteria? It's updated and created by independent expert group nominated by Heart Association. So the expert group also approves new heart symbol applications every month. So that's the thing what we are not doing in this our small team here in heart symbol here in Finnish Heart Association, this criteria and updating criteria things is, as I said, work for expert group. And what else? Yes, here we have also done some studies about the heart symbol system. There's, for example, one modeling study which show how the heart symbol helps to meet the recommendation. But because our tight schedule, I'm not going to show that here, but it's included to the PDF you get after this webinar. And next slide, please. So more about the criteria. Here on the left side, you see these main groups, and on the right side, subgroups, just like for instance. And what about this? As I said, every single criteria try to focus the main nutritional problem in that certain category. So, for example, here in yogurt, we have criteria for fat and for the hard fat, sugar and salt, but not, for example, for fiber. And same thing in the fat spread. But for example, in breads, we of course have criteria for fiber. And when the expert group update or create heart symbol criteria, they consult the food companies to ensure that the criteria are workable. We really try to cooperate with the companies to make these criteria like easy to access for them. And let's see. Yeah, the next one, please. Yes, about the process. First, the heart symbol is, well, so to be able to use the heart symbol, you have to apply it. So that might be a bit different when you compare to Keyhole or Nutri Score. The application can be made online, and the expert group give the right to use the heart symbol. Like I say, once per month, they are just checking the applications. And the heart symbol is also the check of charge. The amount is about maximum €500 per product per year. And if it's question of the smaller enterprises, the price is €200 per year, per product per year. And the money goes to running the system and the marketing heart symbol. And that is because heart symbol is not funded by government, for example. And we are also doing some control checks. So we make some random laboratory measures to check out that heart symbol product comply to criteria. And next slide, please. And here's some numbers. As you can see, the amount of heart symbol products is growing constantly. There are products for both groceries and the food service. And what I can say, the most of biggest food companies are using heart symbol in Finland, and more the small and medium-sized enterprises are doing also the same. And at the moment we have 83 food industry companies and retailers and 54 high volume vegetable producers. And then there is also those restaurants I told you. The number of restaurants with heart symbol is over 2,000, and most of them are schools or daycare or other public restaurants, but it's also possible to have this heart symbol meal in workplaces. And next. And next. Well, yeah. Here I try to show you how our marketing works. Finnish Heart Association and our team is responsible for marketing heart symbol, but we can't do that our own. So there are several instances doing the marketing also. But let's start from our team. We have done some research about our target groups and how to reach them. And after that, that leads some actions. No activities like the actions. I mean campaigns, cooperation with social media influencers, and some cooperation with enterprises also. And we have our own marketing channels like websites, Instagrams, Facebook. Our most important marketing content are, of course, the heart symbol products, but moreover, recipes made from the heart symbol products. So you can go to check from Instagram, for example, and see the content there. Most of the marketing actions is founded by heart symbol license fees. And also I want to mention that in Finland, the Finnish Diabetic Association, the other owner of heart symbol, and all the local heart associations are doing a very good job, like having face-to-face contact in supermarkets and telling about the heart symbol, or at least that was before the corona. Now we will see what happened after corona. And well, on the right side, you find the food industry, which do excellent job with promoting heart symbol, not only in packages, but in their commercial, in TV, newspaper, internet also. And there was some talk about the nutritional responsibility in previous presentation. So the heart symbol is one of the excellent way to show the nutritional responsibility by food industry. And on the left corner, there's health professionals and authorities in Finland. Those both are very committed to recommend heart symbol to customers. And well, heart symbol is also approved by authorities, which give a very good support to our work. Yeah. And yes, next, please. So what Finnish people think about the heart symbol? Most of the Finns knows heart symbol very well, and many of them say that they use product with heart symbol if they just find it. And 74% of consumers aware of heart symbol say that it's important to have heart symbol in supermarket, and 65% say that the heart symbol increase their willingness to buy the product. So I think they are very good numbers and gives a good information about how well people know and want to use heart symbol nowadays. And heart symbol seems to be also a very high valued brand here in Finland. It's the 10th best brand in Finland and the 6th most recommended brand in Finland. And next, please. So then some thoughts about the strengths and weaknesses. First, generally, well, I think the strengths are basically the summary of the previous slides. We have this scientific background. We have many product groups to help to focus critical nutrients. Heart symbol system pay attention in Finnish food culture and dietary habits also. And nowadays, as I just showed you, it's very well known, appreciated, and widely used. And I have to mention also that it's not only the products in Finland, it's also the caterings who use the heart symbol, and it's also used in procurements. But on the other hand, the weaknesses, there are some weaknesses, and one is that it doesn't cover all the product groups, like candies, soft drinks, salty snacks, not included in heart symbol system, and also because it's not the traffic light kind of system, it doesn't give attention to the unhealthy foods. And it's also voluntary based, which means that all the good choices are not using heart symbol. So to sum up this all, it's not the perfect system, but in Finland it seems to be quite excellent tool at the moment to promote public health. Next, please. And just a few words about the heart symbol system versus keyhole. Well, it's hard to compare because they're quite similar, but just to mention, I found some differences. It seems that keyhole is free of charge and you don't have to apply to get the right to use the keyhole. But on the other hand, there are many similarities. And next, please. The Nutri Score, it's very interesting new FOB for us, and we have tried to get known about it. What is that, and find some pluses and minuses also. Well, the good thing is that Nutri Score, as Chantal said, it covers all the food products, and I think that the label itself seemed to be quite easy to understand. But on the other hand, at the moment, I think that if it try to fit all over the Europe, as far as I know, that's the one future plan. That's a bit problematic because the dietary habits and sources of critical nutrients are very different in the different parts of Europe. So how the one algorithm can fit all over the Europe. For example, in Finland, Nutri Score faced some problems when the focus is set on the important source of unsaturated fats, salt, and fibers. And if you talk about the product groups, it's bread and cereal products, milk products, fats and oils. Okay, and the next. So here was my presentation. I want to thank you, and if you have any question of heart symbol, I'm pleased to answer those. Thank you.
So, many thanks, Anna, for this interesting presentation. Now we know when it started, year 2000. Many thanks. I think we dropped our next presentation, maybe some technical now she's coming. Yeah. So now I will introduce the last speaker that will present a specific front of pack nutrition labeling scheme. That's Veronica Orbic, who works at the Swedish Food Agency. She has a PhD in food science and a deep knowledge in the keyhole. That is one of the first front of pack nutrition labeling schemes in the world. It was introduced 1989. So please, Veronica, let us know more about this green symbol.
Thank you very much, Elisabet. And actually, I did have some technical problems with my computer just deciding to restart, but I hope it will not happen during the presentation. And thank you also so much for inviting me to this very interesting webinar about a really highly relevant topic right now. And I'm afraid there will be some repetitions with what Anna-Kara just told you, but I hope it will still be relevant, I really hope. And just so we have some basic about the keyhole, it's just like the other labels. It's a front of pack nutrition label, and it's voluntary and free to use. And please change slide. And you can change again and we'll look into the keyhole. And who is behind the keyhole? You can change slide again, please. And we are 4 countries who are in the so-called Nordic working group. It's Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. And we are sharing, we work on the Nordic keyhole together. We share the responsibility, so we have a rotating share in this working group. And this also means that we really can share the workload, which is very good because it takes a lot of work and resources to have a front of pack nutrition label that is up to date with science, and also to communicate it and maintain it relevant for the consumers, especially since it's been around for, at least in Sweden, for 30 years. There are some other countries in Europe who has the keyhole. It's Lithuania, and then we also have it in Macedonia since 2015. You can please change again. And it all started in the 80s in Sweden. There were different regions in Sweden who introduced different labels indicating a healthier choice in that specific region. And there were also some retailers who started to do the same on their shelves. And this was because there was some debate in Sweden, of course, about non-communicable diseases, and that's why the regions took this action themselves to do something. And at one point, the Swedish Food Agency decided that this might be confusing for consumers. It should be the same label for the entire country. And at first, it was decided that it should have conditions for fat and high fiber. And then there was some really intensive discussions with food producers, academia, regions, agencies, and so on. And rather quickly it was decided that, yes, it should be only one symbol in the whole country. And for those who know Swedish, you can see to the right here that paragraph number 1 says that it should be only one label. At that time, there was no name such as the keyhole, but this logo should have conditions regarding the amount of fat, sugar, salt, and dietary fiber. And it should only be used if you got permission from the Swedish Food Agency before using it. So you can please change again. And then in 1989, it was decided that it should be a keyhole looking like this. And you can take the next one as well. Oh, yeah, thank you. So it should be the food circle, showing that we should have a varied diet, and the food pyramid, showing that we should eat more of some food and less of other foods. So that's the rationale for having this design of a keyhole. And you can please change again. And the keyhole has specific conditions for 32 food groups, and they are divided, as you can see to the right here, we can see we have 11 main groups, and they are then further divided into subgroups having different conditions. You can change again, please. And as Anna-Kara just told you, we have it's the same for the keyhole, that we have the Nordic nutrition recommendations as the scientific basis. And this, when we work on something in common, like the 4 Nordic countries working on the keyhole, it's really, really useful to have the same scientific background or scientific basis, and also we have more or less similar dietary advice. As you can see here in the middle, we can see the Swedish food-based dietary guidelines. So they are showing what changes we need to do in our dietary habits to eat more in line with the Nordic nutrition recommendations. You can see we should eat more of the vegetables, fruits and berries, fish and shellfish, nuts and seeds, and exercise more. We should switch from white flour to whole grain, from butter-based bread fats to vegetable fats and oils, from high-fat dairy products to low-fat dairy products, and eat less red and processed meat, salt, sugar, and alcohol. And based on those food-based dietary guidelines, we are then setting conditions for less and healthier fat. And in the latest regulation, which was published this year, we are focusing more and more on healthier fat. And there are also conditions for less sugar, less salt, more dietary fiber, more whole grain, more fruit and berries, and vegetable and pulses. And in the latest regulation I just mentioned, the main focus was on this more vegetable pulses and more whole grain, I would say, in the changes in that regulation. You can please change again. And apart from those dietary guidelines I just showed, the keyhole itself is a food-based dietary guideline in Sweden. It simply summarizes all the food-based dietary guidelines we do have, and it's a really easy food-based dietary guideline to use in healthcare, and it's also really appreciated in healthcare. So please change slide. And then we were asked also to talk a little bit about our communication and information and so on. And in December 2018, we launched a common Nordic brand strategy and platform for the keyhole. And this was developed together with the Nordic countries that has the keyhole. And we also had a dialogue with the food producers using the keyhole and not using it and so on. And we just published the keyhole design manual based on this brand strategy, showing how you can use the keyhole a little bit more inspiring and so on. You can please change slide. And based on this brand strategy, we have a communication concept. And now I'm just talking for Sweden, but we have we do some campaigns about 2 or 3 times a year in social media, and we are focusing on 3 different target groups. We are focusing on those who's just moved out of their parents' home, who are starting a new life, because we know this is a time when it's easy that dietary habits might not be as healthy as before moving out of home. And we're also focusing on parents or families with small children, because this is also a time when we are a little bit more adaptable to changing our dietary habits in a beneficial way. And we are focusing on people at mid-40s, around 50s, where we also maybe are more thinking about changing our dietary habits. We start maybe to feel that we are not as young any longer. So these are the 3 target groups of this communication concept. And what we want to say with our communication is that it should not be too difficult. Don't change your life, just change to the keyhole, is what it says on those labels. So you can please change slide again. But as an agency, we do of course have other important measures to market or inform about the label, because we actually do have rather limited budget for social campaigns and so on. We have a very limited budget for that, but we do have our own means, and those are very important, I would say. We have our guidelines for public meals, where we can say that choosing keyhole is a way of assuring that you do public meals that are in line with the nutritional recommendations. And we also have our information to primary health care, and we do have education material, and we also have our web page. And you can please change again. Thank you. And because it's very important to implement the label into the society, and in Sweden, when we do a survey, we can see that more than half of the medical doctors and 3/3 of the dietitians, they say that they use the keyhole in their work as an easy tool to recommend to patients and so on. And another important aspect is, of course, the school, because this is where we really can work for a equal health and to improve and to reduce health literacy and so on. So, and we're therefore very happy that nearly 3 out of 4 teachers say that they use the keyhole in their work, and we know that it's part of the school material, and we do actually look into the school material to see that it's really staying up to date in that as well. And finally, we know that it's one of the top 5 most trusted logos in Sweden, and we do have a consumer knowledge above 95%, which is of course very high. So you can please change again. And then you wanted us to talk a little bit about consumer perception, and we did a survey on the keyhole in last December, and we asked 1,000 consumers what they associate with the keyhole, and here you can see the answer to the question. I associate the keyhole with healthier options, and around 80% do associate the keyhole with healthier options. You can see it's divided into the different age groups, and the ones that are strongly agree to this saying is around 20 up to 40%. But if we look at those that agree or strongly agree, we can see that's about 80% who agree to this saying that I associate the keyhole with healthy options. And you can please change slide again. And we also asked, we wanted to know, do they really say that they are using the keyhole to choose healthy food? Do they claim to do it? And here we can see that it was around 60% up to nearly 80% again that say that agree or strongly agree to this position, saying that the keyhole makes it easier for me to choose healthy foods. And you can change again, please. But do they really know what the keyhole says? Well, we know they say that they use it. That's great. But do they know what it says? Well, not in all parameters. Absolutely not, we can see. And most associated with low in sugar, less sugar, and more dietary fiber. But for example, if we think about people that might be in healthcare told that, or in primary care told that they should reduce salt, it's not likely that they are using the keyhole if they are not told it, because only 30% know that the keyhole is having a condition for less salt. So that's an issue we have to work on. And some people, when I've shown this slide, they say, okay, but did you have it in this order in the questionnaire? Why is everyone talking about low sugar? Why do they know that? And actually, we did not have it in this order. We have it in a varied order, but I would guess that we have a lot of focus on sugar in Sweden, and that's why they think, is it a healthy label? It should have sugar. So please take the next slide. And do we do as we say? Because we know that when we report what we are buying, we know that we tend to be more positive or get more positive results. So there is an interesting study from Denmark looking at self-reported preferences and actual purchases using actual purchases from the recipes from the stores, and they could see that the results there suggest that self-reported preferences are correlated with actual purchasing behavior for the keyhole nutrition label. So that was really great to see. And you can please change slide again. Yes, and there is no such thing as a free lunch, people used to say, and there is also no such thing as a perfect label. And we do have some keyhole strengths and weaknesses here that I have listed. One of the strengths is that it's really simple. It's just a keyhole. You don't need any reading skills. It's no nutritional knowledge. And it's really easy for children to use, for example. I know they use it in interventions for children to with overweight, that they can use it to look after in the grocery shops. They can see that if it has the keyhole on it, you can choose it and so on. And it's a really experienced label. It has been improved for more than 30 years. And of course we have done, this is a very important process, I think. And I know I've talked to Anna-Kara a few years ago, and you told me that when Finland wanted to introduce the label, they didn't really think the keyhole was a good idea because it had some strange criteria, you thought. For example, ice cream. And that has now been, it has been changed a lot since it was introduced, and hopefully it has been improved a lot because it has been up to date with science and so on. And it's adapted after Nordic dietary patterns and the greatest risk with our dietary patterns, which is of course very important. And it is really well known and integrated in school, education, healthcare, and so on. And we have spent a lot of resources and working into this, so it's really, really important issue for us. Weaknesses, communication. We have a communicational weakness, because are we really saying it's healthy or healthier? For some foods, it obviously shows a healthy alternative because all unprocessed fruits can be labeled. So it's not showing a healthier fruit alternative because all fruits are healthy in that way and so on. And then in some categories, it's showing a healthier alternative. So that might be a little communicational issue. And it's a slow system. It takes about 2 years for us to change the regulation. And that is, of course, not always the optimal case. And we do have small resources for marketing compared to other labels. And we know we have some limitation in our evaluation of the label. But on the other hand, we really lean back to the Nordic nutrition recommendations where we have a huge amount of scientific evidence that are adapted also in focusing on the Nordic dietary pattern. So we feel rather safe that we are staying up to date with the science anyway. Thank you. And so the next 5 years, what can we see? And this first one might be more of my own thinking, but another weakness with the keyhole is that because of the slow regulation process, in some ways it's good because we send it out, we got a lot of new ideas that can be integrated into the regulatory work while we're working on it. But this makes it slow, and we really must not hamper any healthy product development with this slow process. So in that way, it should be somehow made more flexible. I have no idea how, but I'm sure it's a really great Nordic working group working with this. So I'm sure it could be solved or improved. And of course, we have a new regulation in 5 years, taking into account the new Nordic nutrition recommendations from 2022, and also changes in the Nordic eating patterns during that period, as well as product development, how it's been developed and so forth. And I really hope we have a greater share of eligible products labeled. It varies between the Nordic countries that use the keyhole right now. We have Denmark, which has more than 4,000 products labeled. And in Sweden, we do have somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 products that are labeled. And I mean, we do have a great consumer knowledge in the keyhole, and people say that they are using it, but I really think it would be great if they could increase the use of it even more. And I hope they will do that. And we are hoping that our communication concept really will contribute to this. And with that, I would like to thank you all so much for listening.
Many thanks, Veronica, for this interesting presentation. And many thanks to all three of you, Chantal, Anna, and Veronica. And to wrap up this block of the 3 presentations about these labelings, I would like to ask Anna and Julia, Anna and Chantal, the same question as Veronica had on her last page slide. Where do you see your front of pack nutrition labeling in 5 years? Maybe you start, Chantal. Where do you see it in 5 years?
I have no idea. Well, the Nutri Score, I think, currently is one of the contestants to the farm to fork strategy, potential mandatory and harmonized EU-wide. It's one of the contestants in the EU, as Nicklas actually showed. But now it's less of a scientific question than a political question. And when we have the EU-wide discussions, certain elements, take precedence over only science, and we have no way of foreseeing exactly where this is going to go. So I would love for it to be the harmonized system, but I have no idea where this is going. Outside of the EU, what we know is that certain countries have pledged to adopt the Nutri Score. For example, Morocco has is going to adopt some form of Nutri Score. Some countries are currently reflecting on the object, but at least the idea of having a graded, color-coded label has been found as one of the most innovative systems. So being the Nutri Score or any form that looks like it probably is one of the future developments in front of pack labeling in other countries also.
Thank you, Chantal. So, Anna, where do you think the heart symbol will be in 5 years?
Well, that's a hard question. As Chantal and Veronica said, it's hard to see in future. But well, we were thinking that when you think all over Europe, that the Nutri Score might going strong in the Central Europe. And we were guessing that it's still voluntary based, but let's see what's happened. And when we think about the Nordic markets, I think it's a bit isolated from the Central Europe. It's a bit different markets, and we have our well, not in every company, but quite many companies, we have our own packages, and that could make possible that we could still have our own labels like heart symbol and keyhole. So from that point of view, I think that heart symbol is going strong, and it's have a strong position in Finland, and it's even better known, and it's going strong in the catering system also. And I hope that the food industry is using it as a tool for reformulation. But after all, I think the most important thing is that we have a system that works for consumers, that help to make the better choice, because that's the thing that is FOP are made for. They should have help. They should help consumers, and they should not mislead consumers. So after all, we are okay with any system that helps consumers. So far, we think that a heart symbol in the Finnish market do it quite well, and we want to work for that as it's doing in future. Same.
So Veronica, do you want to add something to your 5 years view when you heard these comments?
Yes, maybe we should add. Maybe I should add just one comment on this European view, because I realized that I was just focusing on the Swedish perspective that way. But we are of course very aware of what's going on in the EU. But we really don't want to forecome the impact assessment that is being done by the Commission now. So we are not. I mean, we are waiting for that, and then we will see. It will be very interesting, of course.
Okay, thank you all for this interesting view in looking into the future. And now we are come to the last presentation, where we learn more about the impact of the different front of pack nutrition labeling schemes. And we will listen to Dr. Stefan Storkstick, and he works at the Max Rubner-Institut in Karlsruhe and has a PhD in human nutrition. And he is one of the authors of the GRC Science for Policy Report Front of Pack Nutrition Labeling Schemes, a comprehensive review, long name of an important report. So he will, out of this comprehensive review, make a presentation. But before I give you the microphone, Stefan, I would like to inform the audience that the chat will open 10:30, and we will probably not, as I said before, able to answer all the questions you write there. And as I said before, the aim of this webinar is to present expert knowledge about these FOP. So please have that in mind when writing your questions in the chat. So, Stefan, please let us know more about the impact.
Many thanks, Elisabet, for the introduction, and also many thanks for having me on the program today. I'm absolutely delighted to present our findings from this report, which was done, as you say, at the JRC. So before my time now at the Rubner-Institut. So please bear that in mind when you see this discordance between the slide deck corporate design and where the report was actually produced. And before I go into the contents, I would just like to quickly mention that, of course, it was not just my work alone, but I was working with a great team at the JRC to produce this report. And this report is freely available online. So you just Google for JRC front of pack and you will find it. Otherwise, if you cannot find it but can find me, please send me an email and I'll be happy to send you the link. And also quickly picking up on this mention of questions and the chat being opened for these questions shortly. I also take questions on my strange name, so please feel free to also cover that. But now let's go into the contents. As you can see here already, we will be first looking at a little bit of, if you could go back one slide, please, just to the contents. I still see already the background. If you could go back one slide to contents. Yes, thank you. So here we'll be talking a little bit about the background and the legal framework for front of pack labeling in the EU. And this EU focus obviously comes from the Joint Research Centre perspective. The Joint Research Centre, or JRC for short, is the European Commission's in-house science service and was providing scientific policy support in this regard. Then we'll be covering a range of FOP schemes, the typology of these schemes. I'm in the lucky position that I already had 3 excellent presenters with their expertise showing some schemes in detail, which will make my life much easier in one of the slides to explain to you what you can see in terms of the front of pack schemes displayed. And then we will look at the impact of front of pack nutrition labeling, which is probably what you're most interested in this talk, and impact on consumers will be addressed, as well as impact on the food offer and on the EU single market to the extent that's actually possible. Next slide, please. So for the background, we know from consumer research that they often describe what is currently available as mandatory nutrition declaration in the EU, also referred to as the Big Seven, and usually found on the back of pack as too technical, incomprehensible, or inaccessible. So there is mandatory nutrition declaration in the EU, but consumers find it too hard to use, to understand. So the logical alternative for back of pack nutrition information that is complicated is, of course, simplified nutrition information that is brought to the front of the pack. And with that, we're already right at the heart of the topic today, front of pack nutrition labeling schemes. Looking at the EU legal framework for front of pack nutrition labeling, we find in the regulation that dates from 2011 that on a voluntary basis, the most important elements of the nutrition information may be repeated in the principal field of vision in order to help consumers to easily see the essential nutrition information when purchasing foods. So this principal field of vision quickly translates into front of pack, essentially. And then what information exactly may be presented there? The energy value and the amount of nutrients, but they may be given by other forms of expression and or presented using graphical forms or symbols in addition to words or numbers. So this really sets the legal framework for front of pack labeling in the EU. And here now we see a range of schemes, some of which were already presented to you in quite some detail. So let me focus on a different aspect in this slide. These different labeling schemes are arranged according to their degree of directiveness, going from the very left being the least directive to the very right being the most directive. And now if you wonder what directive means in this case, is all about to what extent the labeling system makes or takes the decision for you already, whether it's a good choice or a better for you choice. And on the very left, the reference intakes, they really take the legal framework very literally, because they just repeat some of the numerical information from the back of the pack, put it to the front of the pack, and add percentages that give you a reference to how much a portion of that food contributes to your daily intake of the elements listed there. So the nutrients that are listed plus the energy content. And this, because it's a reduced set of the back of pack nutrition information, this is also called a reductive system. Then, moving from the reference intakes a little bit to the right, we find the nutrient-formed battery, which is a system that is proposed by Italy and already in use there in the market. And this just adds to the reference intakes these battery symbols that you see just below the nutritional values for the critical nutrients and energy, and the batteries or the percentage that these nutrients contribute in one portion of that food to your daily intake is also indicated as the charging status of the batteries. And therefore, we have a little bit of an interpretive element, but overall, it's still mostly about the numbers, because you may also wonder, do I now need to get those batteries all to 100%, or should I keep them empty? And yeah, we know from a nutritionist perspective, the 100% should not be exceeded, but may it be better even to not get to 100% in the first place? So that's an open question that the consumer would be facing. Overall, therefore, very little evaluation of the nutritional information, very little interpretation. And this changes as we move further to the right, where we have the multiple traffic lights, which are mainly used in the UK, but you also find them in Ireland, for example. And here we see that the critical nutrients are also coded by colors, by the traffic light colors, so green, amber, and red, depending on the content. There are corresponding thresholds set when you change from green to amber to red. So red meaning a very high content, amber meaning a medium content, and green meaning a low content of that specific nutrient. So you get more interpretation than you just get from these battery symbols on the individual nutrients. But as a consumer, you still have to kind of derive from that what it means for you in terms of choosing that food or not. Is that the right choice for you, or is it not? Do you care more about the salt content? Do you care more about the sugar content? What is it that you specifically need to look out for? And in this sense, you could say it's a very helpful system because it gives you that detail while already giving you an interpretation of what is high, medium, or low. But you still have to make the overall judgment yourself. Then, moving further right, we get to the Nutri Score, which we heard a lot about already from Chantal. And here you see that we no longer find any numbers. We just find a summary score, but on a graded scale, again using the traffic light colors, going from 3 levels to 5 different levels or 5 different grades, but no more numbers. So this label is already very evaluative in the sense that it pretty much sums up the nutritional value for you. And if you still need the numbers, it's not this system that provides the numbers, but there's still the mandatory nutrition declaration back of pack, so it's not gone. Could we please go back to the labeling slide still? Thank you. Perfect. So then at the very right end of the scale, we come to the Nordic keyhole, but also other similar endorsement schemes or positive logos that apply to those products in a category that fulfill certain criteria and therefore mark the better for you choice. And this is the highest abstraction. It's no longer a scale where you can say, well, I'm okay already with the B or the C in the Nutri Score as opposed to a D or an E. It really is a yes or no, a dichotomous scheme that therefore presents the highest level of interpretation or evaluation. And This then also tells you sort of choose me. It's very directive. It's not, well, think about it, but rather saying it's obvious I am the better choice for you. And then on this slide, you also at the bottom right see a couple of other schemes that we also considered in our report, but only if they were compared to any of the other schemes that you see here in color. So there was no specific evaluation, for example, of the Chilean warning signs, which are not really at the moment debated at any or to any meaningful extent in the EU. The focus is much more on those evaluative schemes that have a positive connotation, potentially next to also a negative connotation, but it's also really focusing on what's better for you rather than saying this is certainly the worst option you could choose. Next slide, please. So now looking at what impact these FOP schemes have on consumers, we really went through all the literature that was available at the time, which means going up to 2018. This you have to bear in mind, because in the last couple of years, there have been new studies looking at all these different aspects that are also displayed here. But overall, I would say the picture doesn't really change. So what I'm telling you now still, for the better part, holds true. And therefore, I'm quite comfortable with all the various statements that I'll be making. And as I said, they are based really on an extensive set of scientific literature, but also grey literature where it was available. And what we looked at in terms of consumers, or we find that the scientific literature can be categorized into that studying consumers' attention, then how well consumers accept or prefer even a certain front-of-pack labeling scheme. Then there are studies looking at the understanding of consumers, and there are two types of studies, those that look at the subjective understanding, which means what people say they understand or how they think they understand the scheme, whether they understand it well or not. So there may be a certain mismatch. When people say, yeah, I understand the system perfectly, I know full well what it means, and then you test them objectively, and the result is quite different. Then there's also research into the purchasing intention of people. So just asking them, if you had to choose from these, and you present them with a certain range of foods, with different types of FOP schemes, which ones would they choose? Does it have an impact whether there is a FOP scheme present or not, and which scheme? Could we go back one slide, please? Back, please, not forward. One more. Thank you. And then the last aspect in terms of impact on consumers was research looking into sales data and shopping basket checks to understand what really happens in the supermarket, be it an experimental or real-world supermarket. And then there's also the issue, of course, what we're at the end of the day most interested in is food intake and health. So do these FOP schemes help in that regard? However, it's too removed from a FOP scheme to really fully understand what is the food intake like, what is the health status like, to then be able to say this system works better than that system to clearly improve people's diets. But it can be modeled. And this is what researchers have done in the absence of, one could almost say, the possibility to prove this link. And those modeling studies I will also go into the results of later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So starting with studies on attention to front-of-pack labeling, what we do find, and it may come as no surprise to you, is that size matters. So if the label is displayed big enough, it's much easier to see, or if it's bigger, it's easier to see than when it's smaller. Contrast is also very helpful. So the labeling system should stand out. If you have, say, a green logo on a differently colored green background, it may not be so easy to achieve this contrast. And of course, the same holds for any other color. This is not to say that the keyhole could never stand out on any specific product, but it's just a matter of finding a solution that provides this contrast. Then the uniform placement on pack is also quite understandable how it could be helpful. If you always know on this shape of a package, I always look at the top right and I find the logo or the FOB scheme, perfect. That you will learn quickly and you will always know where to look for that information if you need that information, if you want that information, and if you want to make use of that information. And then, of course, also a uniform FOB scheme would be very helpful in the sense that you then don't have to know all the different schemes and how they work. And regardless of where you go, at least within the EU, you would then find one and the same scheme. You understand how it works. You use it in your daily life, and you don't have to train yourself on a range of different schemes because it's only that one scheme that is around. So that, of course, would be helpful. Whether we can achieve that, only time will tell. Next slide, please. Then the scientific literature on acceptance and preference for a specific FOB scheme shows that consumers tend to prefer interpretative FOB schemes, and specifically those with color coding. So you will now have to derive from this statement which schemes are in, which schemes are out. But it's just that these are those most preferred by consumers. But we also have to bear in mind, if we could go back. Oh, back, please. Thank you. That preference may be influenced. So, for example, using now the case of France with the Nutri Score. The Nutri Score now has been around for some years, and people have seen it, people are aware of it. So they now may automatically say, I prefer this scheme over any other, just because they're most familiar with it, which is also understandable, you could say. And then also because it's a national scheme, they can say, I'm just proud of our own national scheme. I can identify with that scheme. And of course, that holds for any other scheme that is or starts out as a national scheme. So again, Nutri Score just being one example, you can apply that for any other case. And we have to bear in mind then that preference does not equate to better understanding. Only because people say they prefer this or they like this scheme does not mean they understand it the way they should to then be able to make healthier or better food choices. Next slide, please. Then the research on understanding of front of pack labeling. The literature clearly shows that front of pack labeling as such helps consumers identify nutritionally favorable options when compared to a situation without a FOB labeling scheme. So it doesn't matter which scheme, any FOB labeling is better than no FOB labeling. That's the bottom line here. But then looking at the specific schemes, we again find that the color-coded FOB schemes are those that really help people of various ages, socioeconomic status, and cultural background the most in identifying the nutritionally favorable products. Here, we have to bear in mind, it's mostly experimental research. So what really happens in store when left alone, the picture may change or the effects may not be as pronounced. But to the extent that science can assess the situation, we find that for understanding, these color-coded FOB schemes work the best. And here, again, the situation also that self-perceived or subjective understanding may well be at odds with objectively measured understanding. So people may say, yes, I understand the scheme, but then you give them a test that objectively assesses their understanding, and the results may be quite different. Next slide, please. Then in terms of purchasing behavior, we see that experimental studies on purchasing intention show that FOB labeling, especially the color-coded schemes, can facilitate people's choice of nutritionally favorable foods and also have a favorable effect on the nutritional composition of people's shopping baskets. But this is the purchasing intention when they say, yes, I would buy this, and then testing different FOB schemes next to one another, you may see then that these color-coded schemes make people say more often, yes, I would buy this over that product, and therefore improve their shopping basket. Next slide, please. But then looking at the limited real-world evidence, we see that, yes, there is still a positive effect, but it's much smaller than what we see in the more experimental studies, in the more controlled settings. But again, it's the evaluative schemes that guide consumers towards more health-conscious food choices far better than the reductive schemes. And it's again those FOB schemes with color coding, with or without a grading indicator, that appear most promising. So this grading indicator, that's for example a reference to the Nutri Score having those 5 different grades, but the color coding also being present in the multiple traffic lights, for example, but therefore the individual nutrients. That's always helpful for the consumers in terms of what food choices they made in that experimental setting, looking at experimental supermarket data, but also real supermarket sales data and shopping basket checks. Next slide, please. Then in terms of the impact on diet and health, I already mentioned before, there's no empirical evidence to really link any particular FOB scheme directly to concrete changes in food intake, overall diet and health. It's just because it's so hard to prove, if not impossible. It's too removed. We really have to look at what happens in the supermarket. That's where the labeling system is. That's where the decisions about food shopping and food choices, food selection happen. And this is where we then can begin to understand if a specific FOB labeling scheme had an impact or not. But it's also difficult at the moment overall because there's no mandatory FOB labeling, and therefore even the most widespread scheme still isn't very widespread in comparison. And therefore is also a question, what effects could we possibly expect to happen? Looking at the modeling studies that I alluded to earlier, they do predict lower intakes of energy and nutrients of public health concern and higher intakes of dietary fiber and whole grain. But these modeling studies have, in a way, the problem that they usually need to assume a very drastic shift in diets. For example, that people suddenly choose with every single food product that they're purchasing, that they choose the better for them option. And then better for them could mean, in terms of the Nutri Score, moving from a D to a C. In terms of the keyhole, it could then, or it means choosing only products with a keyhole, whereas before they weren't. Then if you assume that, and if that really happens, you see an improvement in the nutritional composition of the shopping basket. But then we also have diet quality studies, and there are several that Chantal, for example, conducted with her team that show a positive association of the FOB scheme choosing higher rated, better scoring foods and a lower risk of non-communicable diseases. So there we do have sort of a hint that there may well be a benefit, but it's definitely very difficult to study. Next slide, please. So now quickly looking at the impact of front of pack nutrition labeling on the food offer. There our literature search found that data was mostly self-reported by industry and therefore very few independent assessments. There is a potential beneficial impact of evaluative FOB schemes on product reformulation and innovation towards more nutritious food supply based on the data available. However, I would be much more comfortable with any further statements on the topic if there was more objective data available. so that we really have an independent assessment. But several of these schemes, especially the evaluative ones, you can understand how much they have or provide an incentive for the manufacturers using these schemes to improve their foods, to reformulate their foods, to innovate their product portfolio, to be more eligible for getting the keyhole as the dichotomous scheme, so that they move more products from the no to the yes, I'm eligible category of products. And with the Nutri Score, that they move up the ladder, going from E all the way up to A, which of course is absolutely not possible for every single product. I don't know which product could possibly achieve that giant leap, but already moving from an E to a D might be an improvement, from a D to a C, and so forth. Next slide, please. We were also tasked, as part of that JSC report, to look into effects or impact of front-of-pack nutrition labeling on the EU single market, but we did not find any robust evidence of anything in this regard. But of course, you can see various issues in case there was a very mixed market. So front-of-pack schemes differing between countries, what impact that may have on consumers and what impact it may have on the manufacturers. And on the consumer side of things, multiple coexistent FOB schemes could result in consumers confusing the meanings of the different FOB schemes, or just feeling overloaded by the multitude of systems and the different types and levels of information. Or they may also simply struggle to compare products across schemes. If you then suddenly, in one and the same country, you find two different schemes, how can you say, okay, I'm choosing here on the basis of the keyhole, there I'm choosing on the basis of the reference intakes, and in a third example, I see the heart symbol or the Nutri Score. How do you deal with that? So it's likely that consumers would struggle with such a situation. And then for manufacturers, it's quite understandable that there could be trade barriers and also the cost for industry to meet the diverging FOB nutrition labeling demands of different countries within the EU. If you had to label your breakfast cereals for Germany in a different way to those in France, or the packages foreseen for Sweden, who knows? It's understandable that it would be a challenge and it would come at a cost for industry. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, the current state of knowledge, again, as I said, looking into the most recent literature, I don't think this has changed fundamentally. Color-coded FOB schemes with or without a summary indicator are the most promising for facilitating the nutritionally favorable choices. And what we need to investigate further is the impact on the food offer, so more objective data, understanding the reformulation and innovation taking place in the face of the FOB schemes, and then also the impact on the EU single market. But who knows, maybe also at the same time, this research will be overtaken by decisions at EU level for potentially mandatory FOB scheme. Next slide, please. Just, of course, the main references for the data presented here. On the one hand, our report, and on the other, the FIC regulation 1169/2011 of the Parliament and the Council. Next slide, please. And with that, I would like to thank you, remind you once again that the front-of-pack nutrition labeling report is freely available online. If you cannot find it, but can find me, please do get in touch. And now I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Stefan, for this excellent presentation. Now we know a lot more about impact. So now it's time for answering questions from the audience. And from all the questions that has been written in the chat and questions that we had earlier today, we have chosen a number. And I will start with a question to you, Stefan. What factors should be considered when developing the optimal front-of-pack nutrition labeling, do you think? What should the optimal FOP look like?
It's always a tough question because we already had that point earlier that it's not so easy to find the one FOP scheme that addresses all issues, that resolves all challenges. But I can only come back to the conclusions of my talk that a winning FOP scheme, as the current scientific literature suggests, would be one that is color-coded, that interprets the nutritional information for the consumer, because it's not very likely that people will spend, I don't know how many minutes on each and every single product they need to purchase to understand the nutritional information, to digest it, and to then make the trade-off also in the face of a probably rather mixed household that they need to cater to. That's another story that we haven't really touched upon, because we always look at just the person doing the shopping. But for whom is the shopping being done? Just for that one person, in which case it may be more straightforward to take any decision. Or will it be for a family of 6? And different ages and generations being in the same household, that may be challenging. But a simple scheme, so one that provides already a good interpretation of the nutritional data, one that stands out, it's big enough in size, easily visible, where you don't have to take out your glasses or your reading glasses in particular if you otherwise are not wearing any, and have to study hard to understand what the system is trying to tell you. The easier you can make the system, the better it will be, because 3 out of 4, or 3 out of the total of 4 thinking styles of consumers are quick thinking styles, that they skim over the information, or that they otherwise only spend very little time, so the information needs to reach the consumer very quickly. So summarizing the nutritional information is essential, and it seems that color coding is one of the keys to doing that. And then we have to understand to what extent we may need a grading summary indicator. Graded or not is also another question, but a summary indicator of the nutritional value.
Thank you, Stefan. There have been a lot of questions to you, Chantal. It's understandable because, I mean, the most of you who are listening to this webinar has knowledge about the keyhole and the heart symbol. And I have one question to you here. We heard about the strength and weakness for heart symbol and keyhole. What do you think is the strength and weaknesses for Nutri Score?
That's a very good question. I think one of the strengths of the Nutri Score is, I would say, are twofold. One is that it builds on previous experiences, including those from the keyhole and the heart symbol. So it's innovative, but then again, we wouldn't have been able to develop it had there not been so many experiences before. So it builds on existing knowledge and currently has some of the criteria of success that Stefan actually mentioned also. It is color-coded, it is summarized, meaning the Nutri Score was also developed with the idea that it should target as much as possible vulnerable groups. And this is the reason why it's a summary system. I have seen it in the questions in the chat about questions of vulnerable groups. And the idea of having a summarized system was really in order to make sure that anyone, even with the most basic nutrition knowledge, would not be hindered in the use of this kind of system. So this is one of the main strengths. We have also done a lot of research comparing the Nutri Score with a lot of different alternatives, and up to now it has appeared to be one of the most effective systems. So it's really supported by a lot of research. In terms of weaknesses, it's linked to its strengths. It's a summary-based system, so it all depends on the possibility of having a very strong nutrient profile. And as it's across the board, we have trade-offs to make between what we include, what we exclude, what kind of food groups are taken into account, how many food groups, how many types of, for example, the Nordic keyhole or the heart symbol have more than 30 food groups, and in the Nutri Score for now there are only 4, and the idea is to keep it across the board. So what we gain by having something across the board, we lose because we're not as specific of the challenges in each food group, for example. So this would be one of the main weaknesses. We have trade-offs to make in the nutrient profile that goes behind it.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you one more question before I give it to others. And it's 2 questions. Is it possible that whole grain will be taken into consideration while updating the criteria? And have there been any studies on how the symbol is perceived by people with eating disorders?
So as to the first question on would whole grains be added into the criteria, I know it's one of the requests from some stakeholders. I know that's something that has come up. I can't elaborate on the current work on the scientific committee, but it's on the deck of the things that are being investigated. And there are, from my scientific point of view, there are 2 avenues of looking into that. One is, should whole grains as an ingredient be incorporated in the algorithm, or is it a question of improving the fiber component of the algorithm? Then these are 2 ways. Australia, that has the health star rating system that is based on a very similar nutrient profile system, also had this experience of upgrading their nutrient profile and had the same question regarding whole grains. And in Australia, after a very large review process, they considered that the inclusion of whole grains as a component of the nutrient profile would entail too many complications in terms of logistics of calculating the system for a limited improvement. So this was their assessment. I can't elaborate on how the assessment of the scientific committee of the Nutri Score will go. And on the second question of are there any studies on how the Nutri Score is perceived in people with eating disorders? Unfortunately, for now, no. We have no studies on this particular question.
Thank you, Chantal. A question to Veronica. Can you tell us something about the challenges you have experienced when the keyhole was expanded from Sweden only to being used in several other countries? For example, how to take into account the variation between countries as regards food traditions, product offers, etc. The expansion to other
Yes, thank you.
countries.
Well, actually, I wasn't around at that time working with it, but I think maybe someone in the public was who can comment or compliment me better. But I think one success factor was that we have the Nordic nutrition recommendation. So we really have this common scientific basis for the work together. And then I think the Nordic group, how it has been working and so on, has been developed from time to time. At the beginning, we wrote because the keyhole is still a Swedish trademark, so it's owned by Sweden in that sense. But we have all signed an agreement that we should work on it together and so on. So we have that as a basis and the Nordic nutrition recommendations, and I think that really made it easier to start working together. And after that, we have. We have lots of discussions within these groups, and we also have discussions with our food industry and so on. And I think we're still evolving on how we should improve this work, and it's an ongoing process. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. A question to you, Stefan. The conclusions say that the color-coded FOP is the most promising label. But how strong or weak is the scientific knowledge behind this conclusion? I mean, more expressed in the same way as grade. very low, moderate, and high grade is, you know, how strong is the evidence?
I can only say we did not do a grade assessment of the studies, so therefore cannot give you that indication. What's the best answer I can give you? It's probably first and foremost that we are in a very lucky position that a lot of different groups have studied the different FOP schemes, and also the FOP schemes have been tested in the same way in a lot of different countries. And from this research comes this conclusion that these color-coded schemes with or without a summary indicator are the most promising. I'm not saying that there are no solutions that could be yet better, that just have not been developed or tested enough to then make the comparison. As the scientific literature stands now, the conclusion holds.
Thank you, Stefan. A question to you, Anna-Kara. Has there been an evaluation of the impact of the heart symbol on dietary choices and public health in the Finnish population? Do you know that?
About how heart symbol work in Finland? Yes, we have done some, and actually in my presentation, when you get it, the PDF, there is some result about that. But I thought that the schedule is too tight, so I didn't mention much about that in my presentation. But what we know about the Finnish heart symbol is that it seems that if you change, we have made this model research that if you change products, normal products to heart symbol product, it's make easy to meet the recommendations. And yes, whatever. Can you repeat the question? Have you something else to?
Yeah. Has there been an evaluation of the impact of the symbol on dietary choices and public health in the Finnish population?
Well, let me think about the different research we have done. Yeah, that was the one, and now we have done different evaluation about that, how people think about the heart symbol, how they feel about that. But that's so far all we have. But it's that's what we have, and we have some research which is still unpublished, and I hope it will be published this year. So you will hear about us a bit later.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you, Anna. I think I go to the last question because we are close now to the end, and that will go to you, Chantal. There's a lot of questions about Nutri Scores. Regarding Nutri Score, how can a consumer understand the transition from A to C, comparing an orange and a freshly squeezed orange? The algorithm somehow discriminates some product groups. Question mark.
The Nutri Score by essence is for pre-packed foods. So technically a freshly squeezed orange would not be pre-packed, and there is a difference in most dietary guidelines between a fresh fruit and a fruit juice. Fruit juice is being considered as less healthy, in particular because they do not provide the same types of nutrients that freshly squeezed juices first. And in order to have a full glass, you need to have it would be the equivalent of multiple oranges. So this is the reason why there is a difference between the two. The second difference being that there are separate criteria for whole foods and beverages. So this is the reason why there would be a difference. But that there should be a difference also in the eye of the consumer between a fresh fruit and fruit juice as a pre-packed one. And even between types of fruit juices, there is a difference even within the Nutri Score.
Thank you. And with that, now we come to the end of this webinar, and I would like to thank all the speakers for their excellent presentations. My colleagues here in the room for great help with technical support, and Per Frank from Nestlé for great support with planning of this webinar. And last but not least, a great thanks to the audience, all of you that have been listening to this webinar. If you would like to see it again, do not despair. We will send you the link to YouTube where the recording of this webinar will be placed. So, and if you have any questions, here you have my contact details. Wish you all a nice weekend. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.